Hi, my name is Brooke Rodriguez. I'm a Taino mother living in Matinacock territory.
Rejuxis. My name is Desiree Kane. I'm a Miwok Two Spirit.
OCO, my name is Mia Beverly. I am from Sandhill Band of Cherokee and Lenape, and welcome to First Foods,
a program made by and for Indigenous people and our allies
who are ready for a new day for old ways. First Foods program is produced by Grinding Stone Collective in partnership with Green Feather Foundation and Her Many Voices Foundation,
along with important support from community members like you.
We have some protocols we'd like to go over with you.
Land acknowledgement. We recognize, uphold, and respect Native nations and their lifeways above all else as the ruling governance of Turtle Island and Abya Yala. Everyone attending this space must uphold the same.
Native knowledge. Lessons learned are not for non-natives to monetize on or repackage as their own. Native knowledge systems belong to the cultural communities they come from and to the guest teachers in our programming.
Foraging and harvesting. Always seek permission from tribal communities to forage and harvest. These medicines or foods may be seasonal or being left to replenish themselves. Also respect if the answer is no.
Intertribal space. We are all from different nations and regions, so what may be odd or undesirable as food to you might be good to someone else. Respect that and don't insult or belittle. Respect tribal food, land, and medicine sovereignty. Remember that majority of foods are shared by many different tribes, but with different names. Do not try to claim exclusivity or copyright for your own people. It's okay to share the name as you know it. It is not okay to create dissent over a different name. No dissent over blood quantum or otherwise more Indianer than you fighting.
Food sovereignty. First people have the rights to hunt, fish, forage, and harvest in their traditional territories. It is unacceptable to critique traditional or contemporary dietary styles as a non-native. Please put any questions that you have in the chat.
The last 30 minutes of class, we often invite attendees to come on and interact with our instructors. Disclaimer: First Foods is for educational purposes only. Before using or ingesting any herb or plant for medicinal or culinary purposes, please consult a physician, medical herbalist, or suitable professional.
Mujuxis. Welcome everyone to another First Foods class. My name is Desiree Kane. I'm a Miwok Two Spirit that lives in occupied Arapaho territory in Colorado. Tonight we have a wonderful show for you. We are having it on the topic of grandmother, bones, bodies, and hearts. Tonight's class features Sara Calvosa Olson, who's a Karuk home cook working with Indigenous Californian foods and is the author of a forthcoming book on that same topic. With an interest in using both culturally sound and faithfully updated techniques using traditional Indigenous plants and animals, her cooking inspires a new look at the oldest foods in California. First Foods program is made possible through partnership with Grinding Stone Collective, Green Feather Foundation, and Her Many Voices Foundation. So we are so happy to bring you a new class, and we will turn it over now to Sara Calvosa.
Ayuki, Nani Fishas, Nutkich, Nani Tui Sara. Hello, how are you? My name is Sara. and I am Karuk, and I grew up on and around the Hoopa Valley Indian Reservation, and currently I'm living on Coast Miwok land in the Bay Area. And I am working in California Indigenous foodways, teaching and writing, and doing recipe development that uses traditional foods in modern ways. And I'm not sure if I should go rewind all the way and start all the way over, Desiree, like guys, and or how?
Maybe you want to start with your slides?
Yeah, let's go ahead and
Okay.
start the slides. Yeah. Do you want me to share them?
Just 1 second. I think Brooke is on it.
Mhm. Okay, so yep, this is about bones, bodies, and hearts. And so where I grew up, many of our traditional foodways were about acorns and salmon primarily, but we also did a lot of gathering of berries and native lettuces and lots and lots of mushrooms. So recently I started to research these traditional foods in relation to a change of life. And I'm going to kind of talk a little bit about that, which I don't normally talk about because it's very personal to me. And but I'm hoping that other people will hopefully get some value out of that as well. So how can I flip to the next slide? Okay, so and most women begin to experience perimenopause in their 40s, and that's premenopause. Essentially, you're starting to get some symptoms of menopause. And and then the average age of menopause is about 51.4 years old. Now, surgical menopause is when surgery and not regular aging causes people to go through menopause, and it occurs after an oophorectomy. Now, I mean, in my whole life, I have always struggled with my moon and having really intense pain and bleeding, and it has always been really bad. And a few years ago, and I guess I was saying this earlier, but most people with a uterus know how difficult it is to navigate through the medical community when you're experiencing pain, because a lot of times the medical community is not really trained to listen to you and hear you when you're talking about your pain and to take it seriously. And that's essentially what happened to me for a very long time. And up until a few years ago, when the pain was really just beyond anything that I could handle anymore, I was also experiencing a lot of vitamin deficiencies. My hair was falling out, and I was losing a lot of like collagen in my skin and everything. I was kind of wasting away. And I finally had to go to the emergency room. I actually went to the emergency room several times in the past few years, and they discovered that I had endometriosis, and that's when the uterine cells are outside of the uterus, and they form these like sticky fibers, and they can cause scar tissue and lesions outside of the body, and can adhere your reproductive organs to other parts of your body. I had it on my gallbladder, and I had it on my intestines, and I ended up losing an ovary and fallopian tubes, and my gallbladder had to be removed, and I had it on my regular bladder, and my uterus was adhered to the pelvic wall with scar tissue. So I ended up having to have eventually a radical hysterectomy where they removed everything, my remaining ovary and my uterus as well. And then they had to do it's called excision, where they are also dealing with all of the lesions and the scar tissue. So one of the things that causes endometriosis to grow is estrogen, but estrogen is such an important hormone for women in our bodies. So I am currently on HRT, which is hormone replacement therapy, and a very, very low dose of estrogen. And so far, so good. And so, what I wanted to talk about was estrogen and how important it is, and what happens to our estrogen, like what happens to estrogen in our bodies during the change, and how we can help support our bodies through traditional foods in this time of our lives. So, let's go to the next slide. So estrogen, come to find out, it actually protects your heart from heart disease, and it protects your bones from osteoporosis. It preserves brain structure, meaning it plays a role in preventing Alzheimer's and dementia, and has antiviral effects, which can help for women when they are, when it comes to like getting the flu and things like that. Estrogen can play a role in helping us recover from that. And in menopause, what happens is your estrogen levels just go way down to non-existent. So in that way, we need to begin to kind of help our bodies continue to protect our heart and our bones and our brains. And heart disease is the #1 killer of women. It doesn't just affect men, which is kind of a myth, but it actually affects women as well. And osteoporosis, and you hear about women breaking their hips a lot, and that comes from our loss of bone density. So let's go to the next slide. So I wanted to talk about these traditional foods as medicine going forward. And especially if you're in your 40s or late 30s and you're starting to kind of think about how to incorporate these habits, this is a good time to learn how to do that and to learn how to start cooking with and using these foods. So let's see, I came up with a couple of recipes today that use some really great superfoods that can help us with our bones and keep our hearts healthy and our vascular systems healthy. That's good, Brooke. We could switch it to the next one. and our brains as well. So if there are any questions, if anybody has any questions about that or what I've just talked about, we can have some questions. Otherwise, I'll transfer over to my kitchen so we can make a couple of things. I'm going to make a squash smoothie bowl and a purple corn and hibiscus punch, it's a Peruvian drink called chicha morada. And I wanted to kind of stick with our theme from last week and use the atole in our squash bowl, because it's not just a first food, but it's a great food all through our lives. So I wanted to incorporate that as well. So I'm going to go over to my kitchen, and I'm just going to
I just wanted to say really quick that I think it's really important what you're doing, because a lot of the times I was speaking with a community member about this last week, about how horrible my birth went. Not everybody's birth goes horrible, but I think that the issue around birthing person's bodies is that we live in a patriarchal world where a lot of the times we're not finding out anything until it happens. So I'm really grateful for matriarchs such as yourself that are in the food, food activists and into food sovereignty. And because that's directly linked to bodily autonomy. If anything I'm getting from last class and this class is the immense amount of work we need to do to know our bodies and to know the stages of our bodies, so that we're not suffering in silence, and that it's not taboo lot of these conversations become so taboo, right?
Yeah. This was particularly, it's not something that I usually talk about. It's really personal. And after talking with you about it, I realized that there are so many women that are on this cusp of, perimenopause and menopause, and we don't really talk about it and how we can support each other in that time. And, it's a great deal of community members, and it's kind of an in-between time where you're not quite an elder, and you're not, but you're a mother, and you've got a life, and you're still trying to like live your life. But I think that we can support each other through food and sharing our knowledge. So yeah. Hey, I'm gonna go ahead and go over to the kitchen. Okay.
Definitely. We'll see you there.
Okay.
So Desiree, in your community, do they speak about the changes that women occur? I know in my community, because we were kind of like colonized for such a long time, anything around birthing person's bodies or about birth or about becoming a grandmother was really um, just not talked about at all.
I mean, yeah, there's been a real disconnect around the coming of age ceremonies for different times, right? And that's something that my community and myself, like, I think we all long for. It's really hard not being in your tribal territory to participate in certain things, even if they are available, which generally they aren't right now because of COVID. So, I mean, people talk about it, but when you're not there, it is really difficult. That's why like Sarah's presentation is really helpful, right? Because Karuk, they're not that far away. Like Sarah's in Miwok territory now, so some of those things are easy to transfer. Others are, ceremonial and not for this space anyway. So it's just, one of the things about colonization happens. Yes.
Yeah, I think that's like for me, a lot of these classes, what they reflect is just the way that colonization affects uh, birthing people, womanhood, matriarchy, rites of passage, and things like that, because of the way that colonization came over and took a hold of our lives. A lot of our matriarchs were affected, and knowledge keeping were affected. So I'm really grateful to classes like this, and just having such really strong birth workers and people come on. This is really just important. But I'm gonna pass it over to Sarah right now, so I'm gonna give you the spotlight. Hey,
Hi.
Sarah.
Hi. So this is my kitchen, and hopefully you can see from in this particular area here, there's like so I can do a close-up. If anybody wants a close-up of something, I can do a close-up there. So one of the first thing I'm going to get started on is this purple corn and hibiscus punch. So I'm going to kind of go through each ingredient and tell you why it's important, and just kind of show you what I'm starting here. So I'm going to turn this on and get it going before I do our squash bowls. But so you're going to start with, this is like just a great drink to have in your refrigerator all of the time. So you can you can have it in the morning, you can have it warm, you can have it cold. I like it cold. You can pour it over fruit, and that's usually what I do. And as a way to use all of my pineapple, because I like to use pineapple peels in the punch. So the foundation of this is a purple corn, and purple corn contains antioxidants. And I guess I should go back, rewind a little bit and tell you why antioxidants are important. So you'll probably hear a lot about antioxidants all the time, and why different foods that are higher in antioxidants. Antioxidants are molecules that fight free radicals, and the free radicals can just like wreak havoc on your body if their levels become too high. They're linked to diabetes and cancer and heart disease. And when you have more free radicals than antioxidants in your body, it can lead to oxidative stress. And oxidative stress can damage your DNA, which increases your risk of cancer, and it can also prematurely age you. So good news is that your body makes antioxidants, but you can also get them from your food. And there's a lot of foods that are high in antioxidants. And I feel like this is kind of the miracle of our first foods, is that they are all so good for you and high antioxidants and other minerals and vitamins that are good for building bones and good for your eyesight and your hair and your skin. And and one of those foods is purple corn. So the purple corn contains anthocyanins, and that's like a super powerful antioxidant. It's been shown to reduce incidence of diabetes and to lower your blood pressure. And it helps prevent cardiovascular disease. So one of the, and let me see if you can see the purple corn. It's like, I have a jar of it. And so one of these, we're going to make a drink that's based around this purple corn, and you might already be able to see how even just sitting here not on the heat, it's already coloring the water. So inside this drink, we're also adding about a half a pineapple's worth of pineapple peels. These pineapple skins are also high in fiber and vitamin C. And they're also rich in manganese. Manganese is a mineral it's a bone building mineral. So people always talk about calcium. When you're older, you need to have calcium in order to have strong bones and build strong bones. But it's not just about the calcium, it's about the supporting minerals and vitamins that help calcium build strong bones. And one of those minerals is manganese. And pineapple skins are rich in manganese, and that can help your teeth and your bones. And it also contains bromelain, which is good for digestion and your gut health. So yeah, it helps with osteoarthritis and cardiovascular disease as well. So the peels of the pineapple, don't ever throw them away. If anything, you can use them to ferment and make tepache with, or even a pineapple vinegar. So never throw them away. They contain a lot of good stuff. So I have about a half a pineapple's worth of pineapple skins in here. And I put in a cup of dried hibiscus jamaica. And I don't know if you can see the jamaica. It's like kind of dark. But jamaica is also packed with antioxidants and can lower your blood pressure and also helps with blood fat levels. So I threw that in there. What else do I have? I've got a cinnamon stick and some cloves. So cinnamon is also another helpful spice. So it can imitate the effects of insulin and help regulate your blood sugar. So using lots of cinnamon is great. It's good for type 2 diabetes. So I'm also adding cloves that are high in manganese, which are also, like I said before, a bone building mineral. And cloves are antibacterial as well, which maybe you've heard of. My mother used to do this when I was little, and my grandmother would make clove oil and put clove oil on toothaches or things like that to sort of help. It has like a numbing agency and an antibacterial agent. So I'm going to add some cloves, and then you just turn this on to a simmer. You stir it all up. I even put half of the core of the pineapple inside here. So you're just going to stir it all up and put it on a simmer. So I'm going to let this simmer for a little while and then talk about the next dish, which is a smoothie bowl. I make smoothie bowls a lot. I feel like it's an easy way in the morning. All you have to do is throw everything in a blender, and and you can, kind of have a little smoothie bar. You throw everything in a blender, and it's a quick way in the morning to get a lot of fiber, a lot of vitamins, all in one kind of refreshing little punch, especially in the summertime when it's hot outside. A smoothie bowl always seems to hit the spot. You can also make your own granolas that use different seeds that are really packed with antioxidants and fiber as well. So this was something that I had not really realized until I started researching this, but squash is incredibly nutrient dense, and it's with a really low calorie count. So that means that you can eat a lot of it and it's still got a low calorie count. It's very filling, and it's kind of a superfood in that way. So it's also high in antioxidants and high in fiber and potassium and beta carotene, which is vitamin A, and it's good for your eyes. Vitamin E, iron, folate, vitamin C, all those other antioxidants that are really good for your skin. And it also stores in your freezer really easily once you've roasted it. So you may not have need for a whole entire squash, but once you've roasted it, you can keep it in your freezer, and you can chop it into cubes and just use the cubes in your smoothie bowl, which is what I do. So this is a butternut squash, and you can use any kind. You can use pumpkin. I used what is it called? I used a different kind of squash, Kubota squash, I think is what it's called. And it has an edible skin in the squash that I use, but all you're going to do is roast your squash. You cut it in half, and I like to roast mine with some maple sugar. So maple sugar, you can either roast it plain or with the maple sugar, or you can like add the maple sugar in afterward, or do both. You can have maple sugar is great. It's lower glycemic index than regular sugar. And it's even better than agave syrup because it contains so many good vitamins and minerals inside the maple sugar. I wish you could smell it. I got my maple sugar from Passamaquoddy maple, which I don't know if you can see that. But Passamaquoddy maple has great products. They have good prices, and I really like them. So the maple sugar and the squash, which I'm not going to roast right now because I already roasted it. So, but I just like to sprinkle the maple sugar or maple syrup. That's also fine too. You can cook it on your squash. Anyway, so maple sugar, high in manganese. It's good for healing wounds and building bones, like we said before about the manganese. It also contains an antioxidant called cobecol, which can potentially prevent breast cancer and ovarian cancer and cervical and colon cancers. And it also lowers your risk of blood sugar spikes due to it being a lower glycemic index. But it also smells really good, and it smells really sweet. So it's one of those cool foods that you don't have to use very much, and it smells sweet. So it almost like tricks your brain into thinking you're having something sweeter than you really are. So definitely recommend trying some maple sugar if you like that kind of flavor, which I feel like who doesn't. So you're just going to roast your squash until it's soft. Usually takes about 45 minutes to an hour, and pull it out, let it cool, chop it into pieces, and put it in the freezer. Here's what it looks like after I roasted it. Yeah, this is like the Kubota squash. It's just you can see how orange it is. And this particular squash is great because, like I said before, you can also eat the peel, which is high in vitamin C and fiber. So let me see. Let me just get my squash out of the freezer so we can make our bowl. You can also buy squash already, pumpkin that's already been pureed. That's fine too, if that's what you have. if you have like a can of leftover pumpkin from the holidays, you can freeze that and use it as well. I'm not that picky. So this is the frozen chunks of squash, which let's see, I made a bowl this morning, so it's like only half full. But so it's kind of like we're making a little bit of a pumpkin pie here. And let me see. So you, in the morning, you've already got your squash. Hopefully you've prepared it over the weekend or something, and you've already got your squash already made. And you can just take things out of the fridge or the freezer and just start putting them inside. So I don't want to make a big one. So you don't need a whole lot. I think that's good for me for squash. All right, so the next thing you're going to add to this is a plain goat's milk yogurt. So I don't know about you guys or the rest of your families, but most of my family is lactose intolerant and cannot really eat cow's milk dairy, but they seem to do well with goat's milk. So, and especially right now, it seems like there's like the yogurt aisle is just like out of control. There's so many kinds of yogurts, but if you can find a goat's milk yogurt or even a plant yogurt or whatever is your favorite kind of plain yogurt. The cool thing about goat's milk yogurt, if you can find it, is that it's not just high in protein, but it also has a lot of calcium, and more bone building minerals like magnesium and potassium and phosphorus than regular milk. And it's also got healthier digestive enzymes. So I recommend the goat's milk if you can get that.
Interesting enough about goat's milk, the molecular structure and level is most similar to human breast milk. So people who are lactose intolerant, really it's more like the tolerance of dairy, like cow dairy and milk and stuff like that. So it's fascinating.
Yeah, I feel like my husband must have eaten my yogurt.
Oh my God.
Oh, I know. He's not above that. He's done that to me before in demos where I'm looking for something like, where is it? And he's like, oops, my bad. He doesn't realize that not everything is for him. So, so this is just Redwood Hill Farm goat milk yogurt, just one little container of it. Yeah, it has 6 grams of protein. And it doesn't have that goaty goat milk kind of smell or flavor, because sometimes goat milk can be a little weird. It can be like a little bit funky, but in this yogurt form, it like kind of like ferments the weirdness out of it, or the funkiness goes away. So it ends up kind of having like a pumpkin cheesecake kind of a consistency and flavor. So after you've added the squash and the yogurt, this is where I'm also like to add the atole. And what I found out about atole was that it's high in antioxidants and it's good fiber, which aids in digestion. And fiber, as you get older, like becomes extremely important. Suddenly you start to think more and more about fiber. And fiber, it's not just for digestion, but it's actually really great for your heart and your cholesterol levels. So any way that you can get additional fiber into your life, the better. So babies and elders, like they have this in common. They need good fiber. So it's also high in iron, which babies also need, and elderly people as well. So, and good for healing. So you can add like a tablespoon of atole. And this atole has, it has, I believe, cinnamon. What is it? Yeah, it's like cinnamon and coconut sugar and masa. So that's it. Cinnamon and coconut sugar are the only additives. So you could make your own. And that's it. So you're just going to mix this up and it's going to get loud. So, hey, Evan. So I'm going to have my son just mute this for a second, and then I'm going to blend it all up in the blender and show you what it looks like when it's done. And if you need to add a little bit of milk or water into it to thin it out, that's okay too, but it's just kind of what it looks like there.
Brooke, I appreciated your comments that maple is matriarch medicine. I love how that is in your nose too. Like you really feel like you're getting something special. If you've ever had a spoonful of maple syrup or something to that effect, oh, so good and nutty. I had this maple syrup infused with pecans recently. My partner still talks about it and we've been out for like months. It's still like we're longing for this maple syrup. It's really good. I didn't know it was so beneficial.
Yeah, I didn't know that either. It had a lot of good things in it. It's like almost like the perfect, and it's sugary, it's sweet. So who doesn't want to have like tasty, delicious medicinal foodstuffs? So we do have a comment in the chat from Wendy. She's asking, where can you get hibiscus? So I know for me in our area, we definitely go to any South American spot, any Caribbean spot to get hibiscus. I usually shop at Oaxaca markets, so indigenous Mexican stores and stuff like that. But Des, where do you get your hibiscus from?
We actually go to a local, it's a, what's it called? It's a grocery store, but the lady is from Colombia. And so she always has some sort of, it's in with the aguas frescas, right?
All right.
Oh,
sorry.
go for it. No.
All finished. So mine has little green flecks in it from the peel. Just put it in your bowl.
I just want to say, Sarah, I have a funny that this recipe is going to somehow become a trend. I'm just putting it out there. It's going to become the new avocado toast. I apologize.
So once you, and it really, I know that I've been talking a lot, but it really doesn't take very much time to make. You throw in the yogurt, you throw in the squash, the maple sugar, the atole, mix it all up. And it really only takes a few minutes when you have everything on hand, which I usually do. I have like a smoothie bowl basket of stuff that has all of the things that I like to put in a smoothie bowl sometimes. And I can do with the kids and lay out like a smoothie bar, but I've got all kinds of dried fruits. I don't know if you can see, but I've got dried fruits and I've got chia seeds, which we're going to use in this, and dried blueberries.
I wondered if chia was going to come into the mix. Chia is an indigenous Californian food. It's superfood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's that. So it's really up to you what you want to put in it here. I also usually like to add some red turmeric, which I forgot to put in. This time I totally forgot, but I think that's okay. I'll add it a little bit here at the end and stir it in. So turmeric is another superfood, a super herb. The cool thing, it contains curcumin, which is another powerful antioxidant, but it's good for increasing your memory and preventing age-related brain disorders like Alzheimer's. And it boosts brain-derived neurotrophic factor and can improve the endothelium, which is the lining of your blood vessels, and that helps function to protect against heart disease. And it's good for arthritis and inflammatory issues. So, and I also read that it's potentially as powerful as Prozac in treating depression.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it has a lot of really wonderful
let me just put a little, so you can mix this in the blending stage, you know, when you're putting it in the blender. But I'm just going to sprinkle a little bit on here just to get that. But so at this point, you can kind of dress up your smoothie bowl however you want. I put chia on it, which is California indigenous superfood, which is super high in fiber, calcium, manganese, again, magnesium, phosphorus. All of the carbs come from highly soluble fiber. So it promotes this feeling of fullness. So that's about a tablespoon of chia seed. And these are some dried, dehydrated blueberries. And these are also high in fiber, manganese, vitamin C, vitamin K. So blueberries also have the highest amount of antioxidants of any of the fruits. So it's like the king of the antioxidant fruits. And these are just simply dehydrated blueberries. So the anthocyanins in blueberries also have an anti-diabetes effect. And all of this information that I'm telling you, I have available for everybody to download, like with the recipes and all of the information about each individual ingredient and what this individual ingredient contains and is good for. So you all can have access to that. So we've got the blueberries, chia seed, we've got a little bit of turmeric. And I'm also going to add some bee pollen, which is not everybody loves bee pollen, but I do. So I'm going to add a little bit of bee pollen. And when you are going through the change, bee pollen is really great. It can lower blood cholesterol levels. It's good for your arteries and circulation. It prevents lipids, which are fats, from oxidizing in the body. It's good for your liver. And it also eases menopausal symptoms like hot flashes, fatigue, mood swings, low energy. Bee pollen is great for that. All right, so, and then I like to grate a little bit of nutmeg on top. Nutmeg is good for circulation and again, high in antioxidants. So a little bit of nutmeg. And then maybe just like a little bit of maple cinnamon sugar on top as well. Why not? And that's that. I don't know if you can see that, hopefully. Oh. So it is very chilly and cold. So it's nice and cooling, especially if you're feeling warm. It seems like once you turn 40, you're just hot all the time. It doesn't even matter. It could be like the dead of winter and you're like sweating. So the great thing about smoothie bowls is that they're always cooling. And then you have all of this instant nutrition in just kind of one meal. And yeah, so I don't actually have anybody here to eat this. Usually my husband is the one who like bats cleanup for me on all of these dishes. He comes and swoops in and eats it, but it's like, it's almost like it has a consistency of like a pumpkin-y cheesecake kind of. Ooh. And it's got all these different textures because you've got the chia, and if you stir it up and let the chia sit, the chia will become hydrated and it'll be softer and it'll take on more of a pudding-like texture. So it won't turn necessarily into like squash soup, but it'll have more of a pudding texture. And then you can add all sorts of fruits. If you don't want blueberries, you can add cherries or blackberries, any fresh fruit. You could add a banana. Dress it up with whatever you've got and whatever works inside your family's like grocery budgets and systems. So that's that. The other thing in the morning that I was making to go with this was this chicha morada. And it's been over here kind of bubbling away. And you can see it's really getting, I don't know if you can see that, but it's really getting purple. And so you're going to let this, usually you're going to let it boil for about a half an hour, and then you're going to strain it and then let it simmer even, and then pour it back in and let it simmer. So I'm going to actually let this simmer for a little bit longer because I like it really, really dark purple. So I'm going to let this simmer for a little bit longer before I strain it, but I'll show you guys. I just want to make sure that I'm not going over on time. So, but I'll show you guys what it looks like. Okay, so, oh yeah, I have fresh pineapple. I can throw fresh pineapple on my smoothie bowl too. It's like the kitchen sink. Yum. I could eat pineapple all day. I love it. So the way that I like to kind of prepare my whole little breakfast here is put some pineapple in the bottom of a glass. And you can also freeze this or put frozen pineapple chunks in there to make it extra cool.
My gosh. This looks, I'm so hungry. You're making me starving.
Oh no. So you're just gonna, I don't know if you can see it, but it's a really beautiful purple, dark purple. And it smells like cinnamon, and it's like, just smells cinnamony and fruity. And then I'll throw some ice cubes in it.
Mia's over here making some serious faces about how delicious this looks also. I see you.
So
It looks so good.
Right, that just looks like it's gonna nourish me. It looks nourishing.
it is very nourishing.
Oh my goodness.
So that's your breakfast in the morning. And know it. And if you do a little bit of prep beforehand, then really you've got your like corn drink all ready to go. And you just have to pour it throughout the week. And the smoothie bowl really only takes a few minutes once you get everything prepared. And it doesn't even take that long to prepare it necessarily. Just maybe like an hour to get yourself prepped for the week. And then that's that. I don't know, this light might be a little bit too bright, but.
I think what's really also just, it's just imagine waking up to all those colors and that's your breakfast.
Yes.
You know, the quote unquote traditional Euro-American diet, you have like pancakes and eggs and bacon and toast, everything is brown.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this is a beautiful indigenous way to decolonize breakfast. This is medicinal and it'll help you get through so many different stages. And I don't even think this is just grandma medicine. I would eat this. I would get this, right?
You're a future grandma, you know.
And it is a good way to know how to nourish your grandmas too. So maybe like it's just a way that you can nourish them as well if they're needing food, and something easy to prepare for them. Or if they struggle with cooking, they don't necessarily, you can make all of this for them in advance and bring it to their house, and they can just have it in the refrigerator. So it is a good way to help take care of them as well. But yeah, anybody can eat it, I think. And that's a good rule of thumb, is like to have colorful food. The more colorful and spicy your food is, the better it is for you. And you'll have more antioxidants. So, yeah.
Could you, we actually have a request from the chat. Could you tell us what the recipe is again, so that people who are taking notes could write down a little bit? I see that Brooke is sharing it in the chat, but maybe could you just read it out, since folks in the chat on Facebook couldn't see the link?
Oh yeah. And I can email it also to anybody that wants it. It's so for both of the recipes.
Yeah, if you could just do a really brief overview, that would be appreciated.
Okay, so with the smoothie bowl, you're going to have 1 cup of frozen steamed or roasted squash. and you can roast that squash by sprinkling some maple sugar on top. And then you can put it in your freezer. I like to cut it up. It's showing that this is cut up into chunks. So it's easier to measure out a cup if you've cut it into chunks. And some of the squashes, you can eat their skins. So maybe just make sure that if maybe you have an edible skinned squash like I had, which was really great, it's just extra fiber. So you've got 1 cup of the frozen squash added with 1 cup of plain goat milk yogurt, maybe a teaspoon of turmeric, a tablespoon of maple sugar, a tablespoon of atole, and then blend those all up. If you don't want to use the turmeric, if it's too powerful or too strong for you, then you can take that out and incorporate it into a different dish if you'd like, but turmeric is a great food. It can be a little bit powerful though. So you blend it all up until you've got a smoothie bowl. And then on top of it, you can pretty much do whatever you like, but I like to add chia seed for all of the protein that's in the chia. And I put about 2 tablespoons of chia seed and bee pollen and dried blueberries. And then I grate a little bit of nutmeg and cinnamon on top. And I also added some of the fresh pineapple that was left over from this chicha morada. And so that's just how we make the bowl. Is that good? Good instructions? So, and then for the chicha morada, it's 16 ounces of purple corn. So that's basically like 2 cups of purple corn. I have them on the cob here as well. And they're like dehydrated purple corn. And half a pineapple's worth of the pineapple skins. I mean, you can always double this recipe and make it in like a huge pot. I just wanted you guys, which is what I would normally do, but I wanted you guys to see it. Like I would normally make it in a large pot and add all of the pineapple skins and more corn.
Oh, wow.
And then I drink a lot of beverages throughout the week. So you're gonna put the corn and the pineapple skins along with a large piece of cinnamon and toss that in there. Oh, you know what I kind of forgot to mention afterward is the lime juice. Sorry. So in the pot, you've got corn, pineapple skins, cinnamon. I also put in a cup of hibiscus because Jamaica is packed with antioxidants that can lower your blood pressure and your blood fat levels. And I put in some cloves and 4 quarts of water. And then, I put in about 6 cloves. And you simmer this for about 30 minutes. And then you're going to strain it and pour it back into the pot and cook it for another 30 minutes. Then you're going to add a couple of limes, like the juice of 2 limes, and sweeten it if you like. I used a little piloncillo that's like this big. It's just a little one. And because you don't want it to be too sweet, but piloncillo is great. It's like, it also contains like the minerals. It's not processed sugar. So it's got more of a molassesy kind of flavor, but you could use maple sugar in there as well. So once you've done that, you add the lime juice, the piloncillo, and then you stick it in the fridge and chill it. And it's good to go for a whole week.
Awesome. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm excited to make that, especially the drink. It just often strikes me when looking at what our ancestors ate, it comes across as very bougie now because some of these things are harder to find, right? It's not actually bougie, but for whatever reason, we have associated it with being kind of fancy. I know I feel spoiled whenever I get a meal that's made of all indigenous foods, and you just come away feeling really good. So I really encourage everybody to make sure that you grab one of Sarah's multiple books and make some of these, because you'll probably wind up feeling pretty good too.
Yeah.
I like that you had non-processed sugar options too. That's something that's going on in our house. And really, with hormones and, I'm 39, I'm getting there. You have to look at how processed foods really do impact our hormones. And so I was glad to see some options beyond that too.
Yeah.
There's a question, where can people order one of your books?
I'm still working on my first book right now. I'm
Okay.
currently working on it. So it should be out next year in 2022.
Where can people find more information about you if they wanted to follow you?
My Instagram is probably the best way to keep up with me, and that's the Fry Bread Riot on Instagram. And I post a lot of the foods that I'm cooking and working with, and it's very seasonal, usually, like what's in season. And I'm usually working with foods that are in season and local. But I also do a lot of work with different communities and their traditional foods as well, to help develop some recipes, because I mean, beyond acorn soup and smoked salmon, we do not have a lot of information about our traditional foodways here in California.
Yeah.
And, an acorn soup is fine and everything, but I have teenagers and they're just not going to eat acorn soup every day. They just don't really love it. So that's really kind of how it started for me in doing this food work, was finding ways to appeal to their palates and to keep us gathering, like keep us out there gathering, keeping us, accessing these rhythms that, of stewardship that we should be, feeling anyway. So it was a way to keep us gathering. And, I was just thinking about how I spend like 10% of my time gathering and 90% of my time processing and preserving the things that I've gathered. And you don't necessarily need a ton of things, you don't need a ton of food, gathered food. You just need enough for your family. But if you know how to preserve it throughout the year, it can really help with food security and food sovereignty. So Megan Baldy was teaching about preserving methods as well. She's like amazing. So
She really is. If people missed her class, you can find that actually on the First Foods Facebook page. We've got that up. Also, by the end of this month, we'll be uploading the last 2 months worth of classes. So if you prefer YouTube, we'll have that available for you too. Thanks for shouting her out, Sarah. We're big fans over here. So Malia left a comment. She says, I'm on a weight loss journey now, so we don't include too many sweeteners. I lost 130 pounds since June 1, 2019. We can have the squashes and other greens, so I'm just wondering if you think doing the smoothie bowl without sweeteners would be okay.
Absolutely. Are you able to have fruit? If you are, fruit can be, and squash in and of itself is sweet, especially if you use a butternut squash or the candy roaster squash. The Cherokee candy roaster squash is an heirloom squash varietal that is indigenous to North America. And it is one of the sweetest squashes naturally that I've found. And it makes great smoothie bowls and pies. And they're also like this big, they're massive. So they last for a really long time. So.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I've actually cut out fruit as well in my maintenance part, which I'm getting really close to. I'll be able to add some of these different things back in, which I'm excited about. But yeah, I just had for lunch some squash, so I'm already thinking like, how can I do this for tomorrow morning? And at 3 o'clock today, Hawaii time, I go to our farmers market, and I always see a lot of the farmers are, having a lot of the squashes now. So yeah, I just wanted to say thanks, and yeah, I'm gonna definitely try it out.
Great.
Okay. Thanks, Malia, for your comments. Well, let me check the Facebook and see if we have any other questions. We have about, looks like 15 minutes left. If there's any comments or questions folks have for Sara, please drop them in our chat or on our Facebook. We're also live. But otherwise, we have been really talking about Indigenous economies and what food means in that context. That's something that Brooke and I are often discussing and looking at. But I just wonder, what do you think when, like, I just wonder, do you barter, right? Do you go and you gather and you barter? And if so, how do you navigate that thing where, like when I go, I like to gather wild mushrooms. I live in a place where that's something that we can do. But there's always somebody who wants to buy my dried mushrooms. And I'm like, that's not what I'm doing here. But do you do anything we could trade for? Like, I'm interested in those things. So how do you navigate that, knowing one is a resource, but two, not wanting to overgather and participate in capitalism while simultaneously having a skill set that people need, are willing to pay money to learn from? Like, what do you think about economy and foraging, I guess is my question.
I think about that a lot because I do get that a lot. People that send me messages like, how much for a pound of acorn flour? And I'm like, realistically, I can't, I refuse to even like participate in that because there's no way, because it's not just the, I think it's because they're only putting value on the finished thing. But really the acorn flour is like, time immemorial of knowledge leading up to me, and then me and my work as far as like the gathering and the time that I spend with my family. There's just no way to put a price tag on it. And not only that, but it takes forever to process acorn flour. It takes a really long time. So it's impossible. And it's all, I think the difference is that for us, when it comes to things like that, it's about a relationship. We have a relationship with what we're gathering and where we're gathering it. There's a relationship there. And you cannot exchange money for a relationship in that way. But if I have like a pound of acorn flour, let's say I were to sell it and it's like, $200 a pound. But if my friend has like eggs, in fact, I just got 2 dozen eggs from my friend. She has eggs, but she doesn't have acorn flour. Trading acorn flour for eggs for me is a good trade. There's a relationship there. And it's like, it's equal almost, because she's raising her chickens. She loves them. She takes care of them. She has a relationship with them. So it's really more about relationship and how we go into the way that we trade with each other, I guess. It's even beyond bartering. It's more of like, we're trading relationships, and it has to be meaningful to you that the other person has a relationship with what they have to trade, right? So it matters to me that I'm trading for mushrooms from somebody who is, indigenous and is, developing a relationship with the place that they gather and the way that they gather their mushrooms and the way that they dry them and store them and, all of that. So I think that that's how I look at it. It's still really hard because I mean, I get messages every day from people asking me, can I buy this? Can I buy that? And it's just like, I have to go through this explanation of how this is really more of a relationship. And where I grew up in Hoopa, it was a major trade hub.
and people were coming from all over to trade. And it was about developing relationships with each other and trust and, trading of, things that you can only get where we live with things that they can only get where they live. And it's because it's all in relationship. So if that answers your question a little bit. Or
It
not really.
does. Ahupa is very well known for still being a trade hub, just in its own kind of way these days. We have a question that says, are there any teachings about producing various flour? Pamela Chris John says, I make white corn flour, but that's it.
About various types of flour, like acorn flour, or mesquite flour. Yeah, there's a lot of information about how to make different flours out there. Well, if there's something in particular that you're interested in, I definitely recommend steering away from white flour as much as possible. And part of the work that I do is about incorporating acorn flour into our everyday diets. And sometimes that means I'm just substituting 1 cup of acorn flour, for 1 cup of white flour. So maybe the recipe calls for 4 cups of flour, but I'll put in 1 cup of acorn flour and only 3 cups of the white flour. And that's still 1 less cup of white flour that you're eating. So if you think about things incrementally like that, you start to make a little bit more progress. You start to be familiar with the way that these foods work and the way that they behave in certain situations like baking or braising and yeah. So there are different types of flour. So if there's anything that you're particularly interested in, I would recommend just reach out to me on Instagram. I'm pretty good at my DMs.
Okay. Mia, what was your question?
Oh yeah, kind of going back to what you talked about with food being a relationship in of itself. I think, like many relationships in our lives, I think the relationship we have with food is also very dynamic and it changes, especially how we look at it. And I was also looking through your feed. It's beautiful, by the way. So I can help but notice you also appreciate the aesthetic, and you're obviously very conscientious about like how you place it and all that sort of thing. So I was wondering how your relationship with food may have changed, transformed, or stayed the same, especially focusing on indigenous ingredients.
It's constantly evolving. I think that's how it is when you are decolonizing your diet. You can't expect to do it all at once. It's something that you should expect to do in incremental ways. And the more I guess I would say I start out with 1 ingredient and I learn everything there is to know about it. And acorns, for example, we've got so many traditional creation stories about acorns. So you're incorporating storytelling, and then all of our basketry. And so you're incorporating tools and art, storytelling, language, learning all of we have 50 words for acorn in our language. So then you start learning the language and then you go out, and then you go out and you start to just observe, because, Native people are the first observational scientists. So then you go out and observe and you see what's going on and you start to access the rhythm of an oak tree and see 1 year, maybe it has a ton of acorns and maybe another year there's not really any acorns. And you start to understand these rhythms a little bit more. Then you're gathering and then you are interacting with your community to learn how the best way is to process the acorns. And then you're interacting with your elders and it becomes a holistic cycle. So I would say that's how it's always started. That's how it started for me since I was a kid growing up. And now, especially, I see that holistic context when I teach my own children. So it can't just be, let's go out, let's get the thing, let's bring it back. It's everything. So that's how you build a relationship with it, where it becomes part of you. And each day I feel like I'm learning something new about something around me that I hadn't thought of before, and it deepens my relationship with these foods and with my plant relatives and animal relatives. It feels like it deepens my relationship with them and as I understand more about them, and also deepens my relationship with my community because I can share what I've learned with them, and it gives me an opportunity to be in service of my people, which is, I feel like, the whole point, like what we should all be living for, is to like be in service of our people and our relatives. So hopefully that answers your question.
Oh, definitely. That was wonderful and really beautiful. And again, I love how it touches upon the idea that although we are talking about food, it really does affect every aspect of our lives and history and future. So that was great. Thank you.
Mhm.
And I see we have another question from Jackie. Going back to substitutions for the flour, they ask about what about blue corn flour?
It would depend on what you're doing. So I feel like if you are interested in using blue corn flour, if that is something that is meaningful to you, that is accessible to you, then what I would recommend doing is really just experimenting with it. Like, playing around with your food is extremely indigenous of you. So I would recommend giving it a shot and maybe starting out with just a little bit here and there. And, so maybe you don't want to go half and half on a recipe, or, I don't know. I would just recommend, because it is a gluten-free food, and if it's in flour form, you're just going to have to see how it behaves when you start cooking with it. And yeah, I would recommend just kind of starting with a little bit at a time and then bumping it up. And then you'll get to the point where it'd be like, this texture isn't quite what I'm used to. I'm not ready to like go the full, gluten-free flour type of route. And, but yeah, I recommend messing around with it, like play with your food.
And like, what kind of what you're touching on is when you're talking about being in relationship with food is really about consent, right? Because if you go and if you forage and you take too much, I can only speak to mushrooms lately because I'm obsessed. But if you go and you take too much, or you uproot some of a mushroom, um, one, the area will let you know and will not have mushrooms for you in the future, or anyone else, which is awful lot like people, right? So like you start to see our shared relationships in some of this. And so when you have a relationship with food or our food systems, the understanding that you gain about yourself and our people, it just gets exponentially deeper and deeper, actually starts to shape your worldview quite a bit. In the ways that we grant one another agency, for example, right? Like I talk to the mushrooms, I'm like, thank you so much, you're growing so good. You're going to nourish us in the future. That was something that some of our first foods teachers last season really reinforced, was like being in positive relationship with the foods, even that you're going to eat. And like, you got to encourage your plants and stuff. So you don't want to go just uproot something or just take. We all know what that's about. And like, we don't have to engage with that as we're foraging or as we're like gathering foods. There's maybe a form of, self-soothing in that, where we're learning agency with living beings, living things. And it does help with like interpersonal stuff too.
Yeah. And gratitude. There's so much gratitude. When you're really in relationship, then you have so much gratitude for the cycle, for that life cycle, and the way that it returns to you here. And you can really kind of feel what it must have felt like to have the salmon return every single year. Even just a fraction of that, what it feels like to have something return every year that you've tended and that you have cared about and are grateful for. So it's a good relationship.
Mm-hmm. We have a question from Pamela. Pamela, would you like to join us and ask your question?
Yeah, I was just wondering, like, when you mentioned purple corn earlier, I was wondering, like, what variety that is, and yeah, just what variety, like, where are you finding it?
I have some vegetable. We have California. We have some vegetable plants. Where are you located?
I'm actually in Southern Ontario in
You
Canada.
froze. Either you froze
Oh,
or I froze.
sorry.
Oh, in Canada.
Okay.
Sorry.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I hear you. It could be me. It was my internet connection. Okay, so if you're in Canada, that I'm not sure about. I know that you can order it. I mean, on the internet, if there are plenty of farms that have it. If you have any like Mexican grocery stores, or like that's what I would go to. I would go check that out because that's where you'll find it. Or it's South American.
Okay, yeah, like we just, oh, okay. Yeah, because I mean we have a lot of varieties of corn, like we use a lot of white corn, but and I've also like lived on the Navajo Reserve, so blue corn was really like prevalent there, but of course that's Arizona, right? Or the Four Corners. So yeah, I was just wondering when you said the variety of purple, I was just, wondering.
Yeah, I am lucky that I have a lot of different types of grocery stores where I live. So I live in the Bay Area near San Francisco, so and Oakland. So I have a lot of variety in that way. And in California, we have a lot of really good growers, people that are growing really cool stuff, like purple corn and green corn and all sorts of stuff. If it's possible for you to grow corn, I would definitely recommend giving that a shot and trying to grow some corn. That's another,
Yeah, for sure.
yeah, that's like another piece of it, is that we need to bring these things in to us as well sometimes, because we can't, not all of us have access, like you're saying, like you don't have access to those particular foods. So maybe bringing something into you, like red corn is good and blue corn would be good. There's like the different glass corn that has the different colors, anything that's bright and colorful in that way. So
yeah, for sure. Well, thanks a lot. You're definitely helping to shift my life for the healthier. I love the work that you're doing. So thanks.
thank you.
Okay.
You're muted, Brooke.
I would say, and it's not like we haven't traded before. We have corn routes literally from South to North America. So Pamela, we can definitely send you some seeds if it's something you want to try out. I'll get in contact with you. If you could just probably just direct message us in this little chat, you just do the scroll down, the little arrow down button, and just message First Foods, and we'll try to get you some corn seeds so that you can have your chicha morada. And I just wanted to thank you, Sarah. Really important. Like, we're talking about grandmothers and we're talking about matriarchy and we're talking about food systems and ecological eating. And I think what's really, really important is the way that all of these things merge into what is the indigenous relationship, right? And I get asked this question a lot by non-natives. What does it mean to be indigenous? And I feel like this class is really small. It's like past, present, future. It's connectivity with the land, ecological eating. A lot of the times, especially from the veganist community, we might get policed a little bit harshly by them. But I think it's a lack of understanding that the indigenous diet is literally paying attention to the ebbs and flows of our regions and our territories, and also understanding to eat seasonally and to eat whole foods, and paying attention to those things, and just decolonizing in that way. And I was wondering if you could maybe speak more on ecological eating as a matriarch, and as the grandmothers are in our nation, encouraging them to kind of share their recipes with us or invite us over to dinner and all this other stuff. So just wondering what you have to say about that.
Yeah, that's exactly the whole philosophy about eating in season It's also because those generally those foods that are in season are like foods that we have like co-evolved with, and and they are especially nutritious for us in that season. But I think it's also important to learn how to preserve these foods and carry them throughout the year, because that is important for food security. So I know that Megan has talked about this before in one of her things about food security, and how frustrating it is that even though we're all so connected by technology today, that we are less food secure than we were 100 years ago. And that is, I feel like that is another really crucial piece. It's vital that we get out and learn how to gather, but it's also vital that we know how to preserve these things and use them to supplement whatever, our foods are that we really are kind of, forced to eat in these colonized diets. So like it's almost impossible to completely decolonize your diet, but it is not impossible. It is really doable to like make some inroads with that. It is really easy and doable to like make some roads and do one little thing each day, even if it's just drinking like one little drink, or you're making one smoothie bowl, or you bake cookies with acorn flour or something like that. You're accessing that, and you're having a connection in that way and a relationship in that way. But also just getting outside if you are able to. But that's also a struggle for a lot of people, is to get outside and to be in their traditional land. So if it's possible, I do recommend being outside and just kind of, I don't know, just kind of developing that relationship if possible.
No, I definitely think that that's the way to be. And yes, food preservation is so important. So when you're going out and you're getting these bounties and stuff like that, and just having I think we had James Calavosa come on, no, Calabasa. I gave him your last name by accident. Whoops, James Calabasa. He came on last year. We had a whole month on Native Pantry, and it was really just informative. A lot of drying techniques, canning, pickling, fermentation, and all of this leads to really good gut health. I was reading an article by anthropologists. It could get kind of skeevy. They took gut samples from elders in the ground, which they shouldn't have done, but what we did learn from that thing was that the gut bacteria was immensely different to today's diet, and a lot more, I guess what they call bacteria flora. Was it had like 40 different, or like some crazy amount, like 100 different strains that we don't have today in our diet. And going back to that ecological diet, and going back to the ferments and to the dried stuff like your wasna that we learned from Sid Whiting, and all of these traditional foods, it's just like it's right at our reach, right? It's like we've had these answers all the time, all along. But like Desiree was saying, and we've actually gotten this comment before from a participant, where they didn't know the foods that they were seeing in like these high-end restaurants and stuff like that were actually indigenous foods. And I think that that's what it kind of pains me a little bit. It makes me really sad, but I think that that's why First Fruits, this space is important for us to share the knowledge, so that we understand that these foods are not for the rich. These are foods that are in our blood lineage. These foods know us for millenniums, and we know them. And so they work well with our bodies, and they're the plant nations and the animal and fungi nations that we know for a really long time. And just having access to that, whether it's knowledge or access to the land or the food, is really important, I think, for just food sovereignty as a whole. But just also kind of having that pride in these foods that we see all around that have become so like high in yield, expensive, are, basically our pantry. That was what we grew up on, ancestral wise.
Yep. Yep.
So I don't know if you want to speak to that, or if we have any more questions, but we are coming to the time. But yeah, I just really thank you for coming here, Sarah. It's been a really good show and I learned a lot. I didn't know so much about the nutritional aspects of those foods, and I've eaten them for a while. And I'm just like, wow, I didn't even know they were packed like that.
Mhm. I know, and I didn't even get into chilies. Those chilies are amazing too. There's so many.
Well, I have a comment. Firstly, thank you, Sarah. I really look forward to your book. Brooke, I'm glad you're here. The combo of you, me, and Mia is awesome. So I just wanted to say I'm glad you're back.
Yeah, it's been fun. Thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity to come and chat with everybody, and it's nice. Even though I'm really nervous, I always get nervous.
You don't seem nervous. But if people want to follow you, they should go on your Instagram, the Fry Bread Riot.
Mhm.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Mia said it's awesome and is, what's it called? Hashtag aesthetic.
And I really, and I'm also happy to send people samples of acorn flour or a sample of purple corn or a sample of something if they just want to give it a try. I feel like that's also part of it, is just demystifying it a bit, because it is one of those things like they're bougie foods, you know, so demystifying these foods and getting people to actually feel them with their hands and smell them and touch them, and kind of just, that's just the first step for a lot of people. So I'm happy to help them with that first step into that food way.
Yeah,
That's
Desiree,
really generous.
I just want to make a comment. Sarah has nettle tortilla bread on her Instagram.
I saw that. Oh my God.
What?
know
Will
what?
you share your screen? Can we see it? Can we look at that just really quick? That sounds epic. I'll be honest. I've never heard of that at all. I didn't even know that was a thing you could do.
Me neither.
So
I'm just.
here's some nettle powder. So these are, I don't know if you can see that in there, but dried nettles that these are just dehydrated nettles that I blitzed in my blender and turned into a powder. You can use it to dye fabric. You can do it, you know, you can use it for so much stuff, but you can especially use it in tortillas, or you can make a drink, a tea, whatever. It's great. And it's also super high in antioxidants.
Gonna have to learn about that one on the list.
And I just made beet tortillas the other day.
Mm-hmm. I'm growing some beets. I don't know what I'm gonna do with them. I don't really eat them though, so maybe I can sneak them into a tortilla to trick myself into eating them.
The best. So what I did was, so you can do, if you have a dehydrator, is dehydrate them and turn them into beet powder. And beet powder is way different than eating beets, because I don't love beets either. I feel like they kind of taste like dirt, but
Yeah.
like
I mean, I like dirt.
Yeah, it's like sugar dirt, but I mean, I'll eat them, but if I put them in a powder, then you can use them to, and you can put them in your smoothie bowl and like dye a smoothie bowl pink.
Mm-hmm.
Or like I did, put it in tortillas.
I'm really into these powders. I've been making, so I have all of these like mushroom products now. I'm drying mushrooms, making mushroom powders for like soups and stuff. And I know some growing celery, and I'm wondering if I could put like beet and celery like powder, because I like to drink just juices and stuff. I could probably sneak it in that way too.
Yeah, that's a great idea. You could powder celery, I'm sure. I make celery salt, but I have a bunch of dehydrated mushrooms too. I mean, I've got like jars and jars of dehydrated mushrooms that I like to turn into mushroom powder and then mix with salt, and you can make mushroom salt and like finish your salads with them.
I'm gonna do that.
Also, I did that with nettles. You can make nettle salt. So
Brooke, you're growing mushrooms too, right? We gotta start making mushroom salt.
Yeah, I have oysters and Filipinos, and I think next I'm gonna grow some lion's mane. But I do have Sarah's thing, so let me just do a
Oh yeah, let's do this.
real fast.
I also ordered a lion's mane block so we can grow some together. That'd be sweet.
that's good. I know mushrooms are amazing.
I don't know, can you guys see it?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Wow, look at the, I love the edible flowers.
Mhm.
I just always feel so fancy with edible flowers, even though it's not. And people look at you like, why are you eating out of the front yard? I'm like, it's part of just kidding. Whoa,
The tortillas.
that
There
is serious
they
talent.
go. Look, there goes the nettle tortillas.
Oh my God, look
Look
at
at
that
that
salad.
greenery. Oh my gosh.
That's actually a smoothie bowl with granola that I made in between the tortillas and the salad. I'm
Yeah.
like,
It
digging
looks like
into
a whole
smoothie.
garden. Like, and do you make your own pasta?
Yeah, there's a picture of pasta that I made with edible flowers. So you can take your flowers and roll them into your pasta and make window pane pasta. And
What?
yeah, and if you, there's like a few pictures in this series, Brooke, if you like click on that. So I made that into ravioli with morels, with like just with gathered mushrooms. You can make a morel and I think it was a wild leek, morels, oh, and fiddlehead fern ravioli. And then I made some into fettuccine.
I'm
And
sending this to my mom.
then before that, I actually used the nettle
Wow.
powder to make pappardelle pasta. You like to dye the pappardelle green right there. Yeah. Mhm.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's talent.
Can you
Go
put
to
the
Sarah's
in your
house like this week. Can we just go to Sarah's house for Sunday?
I was literally about to say that, but I didn't want to be like weird, but like,
Caravan.
And there's a nettle risotto as well. That and you could do that with beets also with the beet powder. And
You
the
could do a
risottos are
quail risotto with some of that pasta. Oh,
yeah.
Oh, look at these fry breads. This is cute.
That was Valentine's Day Indian tacos.
that's so clever.
that's well, good for you. Please let us know when your book comes out. I think we're all now suddenly dying to know what some of your recipes are, especially after seeing them on your Instagram. Brooke had sent me some stuff and I'm like, oh yeah, Coach has got some talent. But now I'm just like, oh my gosh, even visually your work is gorgeous. Holy.
I know, but then everybody will see it's all super easy. It just looks bright and fancy, but it's actually very easy. So lean in the color.
Mhm. Well, so Mia put something in the chat which is new. This is a little bit of a housekeeping item. If you're into classes and you like them, or if you have feedback that we need to know, or you got something to say, please use our link that she's put there for our survey. We're starting to survey folks. We want to make sure that the programming that we're presenting to you is what you're after. We're community led and navigated. So if there's something that you want to see in programming, please also let us know. But yeah, so I think we just have a very few minutes left. Sarah, is there anything that you would like to say in closing, or anybody you want to shout out, or anything we should look forward to?
Let's see. Right now, I'm just doing a lot of work on my book, and this is probably going to be my last engagement really for a little while, so I can just put my head down and focus on that. But I definitely am here for you if you want to connect in some way with your local foods or with your traditional foods. I'm here to help you with that and share what I know with you. So please do not hesitate to reach out and I'll help you connect there. So yeah.
Thank you. Brooke, Mia, you ready to wrap us up?
Yeah, I just want to also put out there that Sara is on Clubhouse. There's like a whole Indian presence on there. So I've been meeting really great like matriarchs and just really great people on there. So Sarah's book, not book, sorry. I'm already thinking about the book. I'm like, I gotta get this book, but she has a club, Indigenous Food Club. So definitely something you would want to check out. And I also want to highlight today Miali. She helped to sponsor some of the programming, and I was just really grateful for Miali. She actually also has a club called Throat Singing on Thursdays, I believe. Um, every Thursday around 8 o'clock.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yes.
spotlight myself. Sorry. All right, I'm spotlighted now. Sorry, I was like in the back, incognito, all you heard my voice.
Also, Brooke is on Clubhouse too. If you're into hanging out with Brooke, which is very entertaining, if you ever get into a Clubhouse room with Brooke, it's good stuff. She'll teach you a lot. I'm not joking. Jump on over. Clubhouse is really becoming like kind of the spot for Native programming. There's a lot of really interesting conversations going on. And there's a club, it's called the Grinding Stone, that you'll find myself and Brooke and a number of other folks doing all sorts of programming. Monday night, we have Indigenous Motherhood hosted by Brooke. I'm working on a natives in crypto thing that's a little bit of an aside. It's bad for the planet, but you should be educated about it anyways. Yeah, come over, We have a lot of positive comments, Sarah. People can't wait to get your cookbook. People are going to go look for everyone, follow us. This has been such a wonderful class. I'm super engaged and I'm excited. I'm ready to go make some dinner from my own garden and see what I can do. Because it really is, little things every single day. Yeah. Right. So I just throw a little bit in, grow some onions. They're the easiest thing in the world. Just throw them in,
Absolutely.
One thing, little things every day. So.
Absolutely. And then these recipes that we made today, I have available. So if you don't have them, or if you don't see them in the chat, then just let me know and I'll send it to you.
Right. Well, we'd like to thank our partners, Ibex Puppetry and the Grinding Stone Collective and Her Many Voices Foundation for the ongoing support to make First Foods happen. We're a 501c3 now, so if you'd like to make a donation, we got you. Please coordinate with Brooke on our Facebook page or the group or all the many ways to get a hold of us. Other than that, be good to one another, be good to yourself. See you next week. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.